Happy Halloween, everybody! I am back. I'm fully recovered for Halloween. October is my favorite month of the year, and I always celebrate Halloween at home with my loved ones. I invite my friends usually. I usually have a home party, I don't go out. The real fun lies in decorating the house with spooky items and the fact that you can wear all the crazy stuff, I think. Yeah. The costume has to be different every year, and the makeup has to get spookier each year. So today I thought, why not have some fun storytelling time with my viewers while I prepare for this year's Halloween party? I invited a bunch of friends tonight, so I'm super excited for the evening. So I have no idea what I'm going to do for my Halloween party makeup, but yeah, I'm just winging it today, literally. So I hope it comes out cool. I'm not planning to do anything creepy on my face. Pretty makeup, but a bit more on the dead side, I think. I'm not very skilled with Halloween makeup, so I won't be using special products like fake skin tissues or anything like that. I think I'll maintain the spooky vibe, but not lean too heavily on the, like horror movie aesthetics. If you want to know what products I'm using, I will list them below so you can check them out if you're interested. So let's get started. So, have you ever wondered how this Halloween tradition began? I actually did some research for this. The Solemnitas Omnium Sanctorum. Solemnitas Omnium Sanctorum. Yes. So this is Latin for Solemnity of All Saints, or it means All Saints' Day. So it's a feast day in Catholicism that honors all the saints. It's celebrated on November 1st by the Roman Catholic Church and many Protestant denominations. It's a holy day of obligation for Catholics. And on this day, you remember and honor the dead. And it's not uncommon for people to visit the graves of their loved ones during this time. So this day was also called All Hallows, or Hallowmas, like Christmas, which comes from the Old English word halig, meaning holy. So the evening before, on October 31st, this day became Halloween, which, as you know, is associated in popular culture with spirits and mysticism. And as the US welcomed Irish immigrants in the late 19th century, this commercialized festivity became popular in America and spread worldwide through media. And over time, the holiday was molded into a more community-centered and neighborly event. And by the 20th century, Halloween had largely lost its superstitious and religious overtones. And children, who are usually taught not to take food, like anything, from strangers, they eagerly shout trick-or-treat on this day, dressing up like ghosts and spirits, and go around collecting candies and snacks. Even teenagers join in, like often playing pranks on people. I remember having so much fun, like roaming around the neighborhood and knocking at every door, shouting trick-or-treat when I was young, when I was in the States. Here in Korea, Halloween is more like a girls' night out with cute costumes on and getting some overpriced drinks at bars. Oh, and there are spooky tales associated with this day. There are urban legends that suggest that candies given to children might contain razors or toxins. And actually bad things did happen too, like while dressed as spirits, some even resort to robbery. The 1959 case, California dentist William Shine, he gave out candy mixed with laxatives. I wonder what happened afterwards. Yeah. I don't want to know. Interesting. Why would somebody do that? And actually in 1974, probably you might have heard about this case, Ronald Clark O'Brien, he gave his son and daughter candies tainted with cyanide to collect insurance money. And that's why he's nicknamed the Candy Man and the man who killed Halloween. His son died after consuming that candy, and O'Brien was executed by lethal injection. So Halloween is a day of high alert for the police. I mean, not to mention what happened in Korea last year on Halloween. Yeah, I was literally freaked out, you know, calling everyone I knew that day. I just don't even want to remember that night. Anyways, let me tell you about a devastating case that took place around the Halloween season. This case had a powerful impact on issues like gun control. So yeah, it's a tragic case. On October 17th, 1992, a Japanese exchange student, Yoshi Hattori, was mistakenly shot and was killed when he entered the wrong house while heading to a Halloween party. He was just trying to have fun, this little guy. Contouring. Born on November 22nd, 1975, Hattori was a 17-year-old high school student from Aichi Prefecture, Japan. So this Japanese student, at that time, he was attending school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, as an exchange student. So during his second year, he participated in the AFS program, which is a high school study abroad program. And in the summer of 1992, Hattori took off for a year in the US. So he stayed with his hosts, the Haymaker family, Richard and Holly Haymaker, in Baton Rouge. They were a university professor and doctor couple. Hattori was known to be an extrovert. He had a bright future ahead. And a few weeks before the tragic incident, the boys learned through an acquaintance about another Japanese exchange student living in the area. The Asian community is very small, right? So you get to know each other at some point. He actually spoke to the student. After speaking with the student over the phone, they were invited to a Halloween costume party. They were so excited to go to this Halloween party, not knowing what would happen that night. So on the evening of October 17th, 1992, while Hattori's host parents, Rick and Holly, went out to watch a movie, Hattori and Webb, the Haymaker's son, headed to the house where the party was supposed to be taking place. It's kind of purplish, right? And Webb, who wasn't great with directions, got lost several times. And they spotted the address 10311 East Brookside with Halloween decorations around the house and several cars parked outside. So Webb thought he found his destination, but actually, the party location was at 10131. So it's a slightly similar address. The number was kind of mixed up in his mind. And around that time of the year, you see Halloween decorations everywhere, right? So you can get confused. But the house actually belonged to Rodney Pears, who was 30 years old at the time. Yeah, Hattori rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. And there was no sound of any party going on in the house. So it was strange to Webb. So Webb immediately sensed that he was at the wrong house. And upon hearing the bell that Hattori rang, Bonnie, the homeowner, opened the door. Hattori was trying to tell Bonnie that they were there for a Halloween party. But without waiting for the boys to explain, Bonnie immediately closed the door and shouted to her husband, Rodney, to get a gun. So the Pears fetched a Smith & Wesson .44 Magnum revolver from his bedroom. Apparently, it was a really unlucky day for Hattori. According to Webb's testimony, Hattori was really eager to get to the party and didn't understand that Pears had a gun. And maybe he thought it was a Halloween thing. Webb later told the police that Hattori was light on his feet and he just sang, in a very boisterous way, "We're here for a party." And when he approached the front door, that was when Pears shouted, "Freeze." But Hattori seemed not to understand because his English was not that good and he kept moving forward. So he kept on trying to explain that there were guests for the party. But unfortunately, Pears fired his gun. Pears fired once, hitting Hattori in the chest. It was later reported that probably Hattori misheard Rodney shouting "freeze" as the word "please," which is something that Japanese people say a lot. It's a common word used in Japanese culture. So here he might have thought he was okay to come inside. So there is a high possibility that this may have led him to approach Rodney and, ultimately get shot. It looks like a bruise, right? Holly Haymaker, Webb's mother, she testified that Hattori had lost one of his contact lenses and he wasn't wearing them that evening, confirming that his vision was impaired that night. The bullet entered the upper part of Hattori's left lung and exited through his 7th rib. Hattori was pronounced dead due to excessive bleeding around 8:49 p.m. While heading to the hospital after the paramedics arrived at the scene at 8:39 p.m. Oh my god. I can assure you, this is going to look good in the end. So here, to Americans, this incident may look like a simple case of misunderstanding and mistake, but the case actually grew into something like a clash between two starkly different cultures when it comes to dealing with guns, because Hattori was Japanese. A media frenzy followed in Japan, and later there was a massive campaign to change Americans' gun laws. The police initially released Pierce without charge, assuming that he was within his rights to shoot a trespasser. But after complaints from Louisiana's governor and Japan's consul in New Orleans, he was charged with manslaughter. So his lawyers, of course, worked hard to establish his actions as self-defense. Louisiana law does allow firing on intruders inside a property, but still, although Hattori stepped onto the property, he never entered his house. The Pierce choice of a powerful .44 Magnum especially raised eyebrows. I am not familiar with guns, but from what I learned, .44 Magnum revolver is quite powerful. And his demeanor during the trial was strange. His argument that he was terrified by a 17-year-old Asian teenager dressed in a modest Halloween costume lacked sincerity. And his facial expressions and testimonies lacked the guilt or shock or anything one might expect from someone who was taken alive. Or maybe that's just how the Japanese people saw it at the time. Bonnie Pierce testified that she saw someone wrapped in bandages near the front porch pillar, and upon noticing this shorter Asian figure rapidly approaching towards the front door, she panicked. She panicked. And she shut the door and shouted to her husband to get the gun. And this is what the Pierce testified about the moment just before the shooting. It was a person coming from behind the car, moving real fast, and at that point, I pointed the gun and hollered, "Freeze!" But the person kept coming towards me, moving very erratically. He kept moving forward. I remember him laughing, and I was scared to death. This person was not going to stop, and I had no choice. He was going to do harm to me. Rodney claimed that he had never seen his wife so scared during the trial. He portrayed all his actions as protective love for his family. He insisted that he had no choice. He had no choice but to shoot him. Oh, I look hideous. I look hideous. But here's the question. Was the situation so menacing for the Pierce couple that using a gun was inevitable? First of all, Bonnie knew right away from the boy's petite figure that he was Asian. And strangely, after the husband shot the young boy, he just immediately closed the front door and never came out. After Hattori was shot, Webb, who was next to him, he rushed to a neighbor to call 911, and this neighbor, named Stan Lucky, immediately called the emergency services. Mr. Lucky, along with Webb, went over to the Pierce house where Hattori was laying down and instructed Webb to apply pressure to Hattori's wound. And all along, while neighbors and Webb attended to the injured Hattori until the paramedics arrived, Rodney just locked his front door and merely watched from his window. On that day, it is said that Hattori was dressed modestly, You know, he was dressed up as John Travolta's character from the movie Saturday Night Fever, and he wore a rented tuxedo, black pants, and a wrinkled white shirt. And Hattori was holding a camera in his hand. And Hattori and Webb, they both didn't wear anything on their faces. They didn't wear masks. So it was visible that these guys were actually young boys. Ironically, Webb's outfit stood out even more than Hattori's costume. Just a few days before the incident, Webb had injured his neck by jumping into a swimming pool, so he was actually wearing a cast, a real cast. He wore shorts, tennis shoes, and had bandages on his head. It looked as if he had been in a traffic accident. The question was whether Pierce, who was 188 centimeters tall, felt really threatened or scared by Hattori. Because Hattori was way smaller, he was 170 centimeters tall and weighed 61 kilograms. And what was even more strange is that the Pierce couple gave contradictory testimonies throughout the police interrogations and trials. Like, Pierce testified that he had never used a gun in the past 2 years. But in reality, he was a gun enthusiast who had 6 guns placed around his house and had fired over 200 times in the past 2 years. So Rodney frequently boasted about deer hunting being his hobby and was often involved in shooting dogs and cats in the neighborhood or on his property. And on the day of the incident, after having a dispute with his wife's ex-husband, Rodney threatened him that he would kill him if he came back. You know, the next time you come, you will be killed. And it was known that he was drinking whiskey to calm himself down before all this incident took place. The plaintiff argued that instead of using the rifle that was at the entrance, the fact that he went all the way to the bedroom to take the .44 Magnum revolver from the closet clearly indicated his intent to kill this stranger. The crease. I really don't like the texture of this makeup product. But in May 1993, Rodney Pierce was acquitted after a jury deliberation of just 3 hours. The Baton Rouge District Court jury unanimously declared him not guilty. So after this trial, Hattori's family decided to launch a civil suit against Rodney Pierce and his wife Bonnie and their home insurance company. And in this subsequent civil trial, after a 4-day trial from September 12 to 15th, 1994, the judge ruled that Rodney Pierce must compensate Hattori's parents, Masaichi and Hattori Miyako, a sum of $650,000. The Pierce appealed this decision, but the Louisiana Court of Appeals upheld this judgment in October 1995. He appealed once again. His second appeal to the Supreme Court of Louisiana was rejected in January 1996. Of the total $650,000 US judgment, his insurance company paid $100,000 US, and Pierce had to pay the remaining $550,000. And because of this incident, Rodney was fired from his job at a supermarket, and even 30 years later, it is known that he has not paid any of the compensation and has declared bankruptcy. If there's an update on this information, just let me know. And currently his whereabouts are unknown. So out of the $100,000 they received from the insurance company, after deducting attorney fees and all the trial costs, Hattori family, they established a foundation called Yoshi's Gift. And this foundation provides scholarships to one American high school student in Japan each year and supports gun control organizations in the United States. Hattori's parents started a petition demanding the removal of guns from American homes, and they gathered over 1.7 million signatures within a year. It's known that Webb's parents, the Haymakers family, also dedicated themselves into activism after this incident. In November 1993, they met then US President Bill Clinton to deliver the signatures. And the gun control measures afterwards has actually gotten a boost from their campaign. The 30th anniversary of President John F. Kennedy's assassination that month also helped raise awareness of the issue of gun control. I might apply some glitter over here. Pretty. Shortly after the Congress passed the Bratty Handgun Violence Prevention Act, mandating, background checks on gun buyers and a 5-day waiting period on all purchases. And President Clinton signed it into law just weeks after meeting the Hattoris and Haymakers. So we can say that this case actually had a significant impact. Prettier with the glitter. Yeah, love it. In Baton Rouge, a gun control organization commemorates October 17th as Yoshi's Day. And nearly 3 decades after their son's death, Miyako and Masa remain involved in activism for gun control. And most recently, they spoke to students who survived the February 2018 Parkland shooting, and they also took part in the March for Our Lives in March 2018 to show support. But gun-related cases like Hattori's never stops. In April 2013 alone, this year, in the United States, a 16-year-old named Rolf Jarl was shot after mistakenly ringing a neighbor's doorbell. And a few days later, 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis was shot and killed by the homeowner for pulling into, the wrong driveway. And even in May, a 14-year-old girl was playing hide and seek, and she was just mistakenly received as a threat and was shot dead by an old man. So these kind of similar cases involving guns are just happening every day in the United States, which I think is a huge problem. This needs concentration, so give me a moment. Looks good. What should I do with the lips? What should I do? Blue. Black? Black. What do you think? Do I look dead? Not that bad, but I think let's just add a little bit of purple hue. I love it. I like the color. So, back to the story. While 20 states in the United States apply the Castle Doctrine, which suggests that a person can exercise the right to self-defense against someone trying to invade their home, and 30 states have adopted Stand Your Ground law, which expands the scope of self-defense outside the home. But I can't help but think that the so-called self-defense law, which, meant to ensure safety in one's home, often leads to shooting first and asking questions later, which is scary, right? So according to the Gun Violence Archive in 2022, there were 22,000 gun-related deaths in the United States. And by the end of April 2023, the number had already reached past 12,000. So that's a lot, that's a huge number. As a Korean living in Korea, where we don't allow the possession of guns, these kind of stories are wild, It's so scary. And what are your thoughts about this case? Do you think that Rodney being found not guilty acceptable in your culture? There is a monitor below the camera. I can see myself with my makeup on. This is my first time doing makeup in front of the camera, and I think I didn't do a bad job. I like this makeup. So thank you so much for staying with me all along, and I hope you liked today's content. Happy Halloween, you guys, and thank you so much for supporting my channel. Bye bye. 어떤 거 같아? 뭐 같아? 지금 죽은 사람 같아? 좀비 같아? 입술 색깔 어떤 거 같아?
확 창백하네.
이게 영혼이 없지?